Welcome back. Thank you for coming back. Would those people outside please join us? And those inside, please be seated. We're about to have a fascinating, I hope, panel discussion on a very important subject for Israel. Not only is Israel becoming a high-tech superpower, or has become one, but it's also becoming a natural gas superpower, and that's what we're here to discuss today. With me we have four distinguished panelists. I'd like to introduce them from your left to right. Alexander Varshavsky is Director General of the Natural Gas Authority in the Ministry of National Infrastructure, Energy and Water Resources. Binyamin Bini Zomer has been Noble Energy Israel's country manager for just over a year, and he immigrated to Israel from the United States in 2010 to join Noble Energy. Yossi Rosen is chairman of the Israeli Institute of Energy and Environment, a director of XT Group and its subsidiaries, as well as the president of XT Holdings and the chairman of Reshet Noga, the Channel 2 broadcaster. He has also served as Honorary Consul General of Finland in Tel Aviv. And finally, someone who needs no introduction to this audience, the Jerusalem Post senior contributing editor, Carolyn B. Glick, who among other things, thank you very much. Let's welcome all of our panelists. Who, among other things, is an expert on gas, sort of. Let me start, Bini Zomer, by asking you how you see the natural gas NG framework. Is it good for Israel? And if so, why is it good for Israel?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Jerusalem Post, for hosting this very important and fascinating conference. The natural gas framework that, as Minister Steinitz said this morning, passed 17-1 in the government and received broad support in the Knesset as well, is very good for Israel. First and foremost, because it meets the goals that the government set in providing energy security for the country. When we sat with the government, we found that we had a number of common goals. Amongst them was developing Leviathan, our 2010 discovery, as quickly as possible, expanding Tamar for the benefit of the domestic market as well as for exports, capturing regional markets, providing a secure energy through increased infrastructure in Israel, and creating and sustaining a oil and gas sector here. And so the framework achieves all of those goals while providing competition through the sale of Tanin and Karish, shows that Israel is open for business, which will encourage additional companies to come to Israel and invest. As Mr. Stein said, we've had a decrease in foreign investment, and it allows us to move forward with our investments of between $6 and $8 billion over the next 3 to 4 years in investing in infrastructure in Israel.
Thank you. Yossi Rosen, the gas deal has come under some dispute and controversy, and we've seen even protests on the street. How do you respond to those who oppose it?
Good morning. First of all, I believe that any major issue in Israel meet demonstration since the beginning of the country. For nearly 60 years, we were praying for oil and later on for gas. When we have the gas that can change entirely, not only our economic, but also our global standing in this area in the world, we hear demonstrations that are mainly more political than in real terms. I want to just tell you about 10 reasons why I believe that this gas of Leviathan is very important and essential for our country.
Yossi, if you can just speak into the microphone because some people can't hear you.
First of all, to increase the supply of gas to the country and to the region. it will influence the price. When you have bigger supply, better supply, of course it reduces the price. We don't need any control on prices. The market will do the best to have the realistic prices. Although our prices are much lower than in Europe, it's higher than in the States, but it's a different economy, different sources. We need energy safety and security. We need energy independence. We need the second pipeline. We are not going to have the second pipeline before the development of Leviathan. You know, all our supply for electricity and gas is depend on one narrow pipeline. You can consider in our area from security problem, technical problem, that we can't rely only on one pipeline. Supply of gas to the industry. The gas can change entirely the profitability of the Israeli industry. To influence the environment, the gas already changed. It will change the environment by reducing the pollution. Increasing of income from export. You know that when you export, you have not only sales, you have foreign exchange. It will contribute to our geopolitical geopolitical relationship with the area, Egypt, Jordan, other countries. And the most important, the people talking about the income from the gas. You probably know and heard that according to the framework, the producer will pay royalties and tax nearly 60% of the income. The meaning is more income and more money to spend for social issues. To summarize these 10 points, it means that this gas is essential for our economy, for our environment, for our political relation, and not least, it will create more investment in Israel. We can't send away the investment by our regulation. We must encourage them. The only way to encourage them is to create the ground, the atmosphere for their investment, for their contribution to our economy.
Thank you, Yossi. Alexander Warshawski, picking up on that last point, what impact will this gas deal have on the Israeli economy?
The gas discoveries which were done several years ago, in fact, are a game changer for the Israeli economy. During only 2.5 years after the Tamar gas is supplied to Israel, nearly half of all electricity production now is based on gas. All major industrial facilities in Israel are also connected to gas supply, like refineries. We have an extensive program, a very serious program to connect to gas the other industries, the middle-sized and small industries. At present, it's in the beginning. If we're talking about the power production, 13 from 15 largest power stations already are working on gas. And in fact, the rapidness of entering gas into Israeli economics is very substantial. And we hope that it will be also in the future. We have a program to use gas for transport. There is a government decision to transfer more than half of all transport vehicles to gas in 10 years. There is a possibility for a petrochemical industry. So the potential is very big.
Great. Carolyn, the gas deal has been called a game changer. We have an audience here of many diplomats. How is it going to, looking at the bigger picture, change the face of Israel?
I think that it's important to understand that what the gas industry, what the development of Israel's independent energy capabilities does for Israel is it makes us a player for the first time, not just a small-time player that accepts the rules that are dictated by others, but actually a player on the international energy stage. I think you see it already, the ramifications of Israel's burgeoning gas industry. We saw it with the very business-like manner in which Vladimir Putin now meets with the Prime Minister of Israel at a moment's notice. I mean, if we recall, when the Russians deployed their forces for the first time into Syria, Netanyahu asked for a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and within a few days he was in Moscow meeting with him. Putin, if you recall, was in Israel, I think it was 3 years ago, mainly wanting to talk about Israeli natural gas and what the impact of our natural gas deposits were going to have on global natural gas markets. And I just want to say a word about the controversy regarding Israel's natural gas industry. I think that what we've seen since the Tamar field was first brought online, and even before that, and certainly since the Leviathan gas field began work towards developing it, is that we've had this backlash, this reactionary backlash in Israel, and saying that this was somehow or another raping of our natural resources. And I should give this disclaimer, I've never actually met anybody in Noble Energy until I was sitting with Mr. Zomer in the green room. Don't work for Noble Energy, although when I've written on behalf of the development of Israel's natural gas resources, I've for some reason been accused of doing so, as if a normal Israeli can't recognize why this is a game changer for our economy and for our geopolitical status. It's commonsensical, and in fact, that's one of the reasons why the mass protests against Israel's development of our independent energy capabilities through natural gas, and not indeed through a pilot program which was shot down for our oil deposits, our shale oil deposits in the Ela Valley, is that there seems to be this unfortunate ability in Israeli society when interested parties are able to convince the public that it's not in our interest to be strong, and that it's somehow or another exploiting the Israeli public to provide us with a resource that we never dreamed that we would have. I mean, we are basically finding money in our pockets with this natural gas find, and we would not be able to develop it if Noble Energy and other consortiums hadn't come in and paid for the exploration costs and had the technologies and the capacity to take gas basically from the bottom of the sea and bring it to the use of the Israeli people and to the benefit of the Israeli economy. And I think that it behooves all of us to recognize that so much of the discourse that we've had about natural gas and whether this is good for Israel or bad for Israel has been based on lies and distorted statistics that have been put out by various media and politicians who I don't think we can look at the impact of their operations and feel that they benefited either the Israeli people or the Israeli economy. And just one last point on this, so that we understand, by changing the regulatory environment in Israel to the detriment of gas companies like Noble Energies, I think that the so-called populists, who are really reactionaries in Israel, have played an instrumental role in the fact that between 2013 and 2014, foreign direct investment in Israel dropped by 46%. When you have an unstable regulatory environment, it makes it very difficult for foreign investors who actually want to invest in our economy to take the risk of doing so, because they fear that after they've actually developed their projects, they will face a regulatory environment that makes it very difficult for them to be profitable, to profit from their labors, and that's a shame, and it's something that we as a society have to work on very, very, very strongly and assertively to ensure that the wealth that we're now finding in our pockets is actually able to not only enrich us as a society from a monetary perspective, but also to enhance our national security and our geopolitical position.
Speaking about lobbying for noble energy, Benny Zomer, let me throw you what you call a curveball. At the Rabin rally just a couple of weeks ago, there were big signs accusing Bill Clinton of being a lobbyist for noble energy. Is Bill Clinton a lobbyist for noble energy?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. But I think it speaks to something deeper, and I think that Carolyn's getting at. It's always important for a country to get its natural resource policy right. And what happened was when we made the Tamar discovery in 2009, which was the largest offshore natural gas discovery for that year in the world, and followed that up with a discovery twice as large the following year with the Leviathan discovery, what you found was you had discoveries that outpaced the belief the government had that we'd ever find anything. And so for a long time, the government was playing catch-up with the regulatory structure to make it fit these large discoveries. And it's a very important discussion to have. Unfortunately, instead of having a discussion on what these regulations should be and having a responsible discussion, you have people at rallies holding up signs and continuing to throw out these red herrings. Bill Clinton's our lobbyist. We sponsored a 4th of July party at the embassy. John Kerry's a shareholder. I'm raising these. None of these are, they're all meant to create or delegitimize our activities in Israel. The fact that Bill Clinton never worked for Noble Energy, not as a lobbyist here, not as a lobbyist anywhere, doesn't seem to interest them. And it's unfortunate because it's such an important discussion to have. We get bogged down in these signs and trying to discredit those who take positions in favor of Israel's energy future.
Yossi Rosen, why hasn't there been a more transparent discussion, as Benny refers to? Why hasn't it been brought to the public what this is all about, if it's such a good deal? And why do those in the opposition, especially in the Labour Party, the Zionist Union, oppose this deal so harshly?
First of all, when you come to politics, you never can convince the public. Everyone has his own opinion. Maybe usually he has two opinions, one against the other. Therefore, it's very difficult to convince. I believe you heard today the Ministry of Energy. You heard the Prime Minister. You know, both of them are committed because they believe. I think the government should run the country. They don't have to go after polls and hear what is good today and what is good tomorrow. If Ben-Gurion did it in this way, we never had the state of Israel. And many other, the road number 6, if you remember the demonstrations and the problems, you can't develop a country with poll opinion. You should decide what is good for the country and run it. You asked me before the panel about the prices, the control of prices. I have two answers. One I already made earlier, that the supply will create not also demand, but will influence the price. But there is you don't need the control. You know, the main buyer for the gas, now it's nearly 80%, is the electricity company, who owned by the government. The government can dictate the price through the electricity company, but they don't interfere because they know that there are global prices, and we are there.
Let me pick up on that, Alexander Warshawski. What will this gas deal mean for the private consumer, for the average Israeli family, in terms of prices and convenience?
In fact, after the last changes 3 years ago of the tax law, the government take from the revenues for gas sales will reach for the large gas fields 60% and even more. So these are the money which comes to the government budget. Regarding the prices, this regulatory framework, in fact, it does not set a price control. It simply says that the future agreements for a relatively short period of time of several years should be indexed and close to the agreements which were done before this regulatory framework approved. It means that for the independent power producers, it will be indexed to the power to the cost of power supply for electric company, and for the industry, it will be like an existing agreements with refineries, which are good agreements, which are no indexed to Brent. So it means that during this period, the prices are not supposed to grow, and as it was mentioned earlier, these prices are lower than the prices for gas in Europe.
Carolyn, you know, it became a very political issue, and we saw the resignation of Aryeh Deri in order to push this natural gas deal through. How do you see it from a political point of view?
I find it very troubling. I mean, like Bill Clinton and I would assume, have very little in common, you know, in terms of common outlook about a lot of things. And the fact is that he took a free market stand on this, and he knows that the reason that the American natural gas industry works is because it's diversified. People have been allowed, power companies, gas companies have been allowed to develop both the resources and also the means of transporting the gas to the consumers over a long period, and that's the reason why gas prices in the United States, among others, is low. It's because it's a fairly good regulatory environment, and because you have a large supply of natural gas. And so, you know, it's very difficult. I was shocked, actually, when I saw the protests against the gas, because it doesn't make any rational sense. And what you really see is people whipped up into this righteous wrath over the piggish capitalists or whatever. And the minute that you hear things like that being thrown around into the air, you understand that you're not dealing in a world of rationality. You're dealing with political exploitation of voters for narrow political ends, and to try to rally troops around a leader who's going to be willing to stand up to people who are not persecuting him and are in fact empowering him. So I mean, I think that in many regards this protest movement against the gas industry is a very sorry chapter in the exploitation of a population that is not well schooled in basic economic realities, and it's a shame, and I think it's become very much a political issue. And by the way, I think it's important to note that Aryeh Deri does not oppose this. I think that we saw a regulator in terms of the heads of in terms of the Treasury Department clerk, essentially, that claimed that we're dealing with a gas monopoly and therefore it shouldn't be approved. This was a breach of his own authority. It was also factually incorrect, and it's a real shame that it's come to this. It's had a dire impact on Israel's ability to attract investment.
Bini Zomer, when are we actually going to see gas being taken out and enjoy the fruits of your labor? What is your vision for Leviathan and for the future?
So first, let me just clarify, we've seen gas flowing in Israel since 2004 when we had our Mary B discovery, and we started flowing gas from Tamar in March of 2013. So for 2 years, we've been flowing gas from Tamar up to a little more than a billion cubic feet of gas a day. Some days it's 60% of Israel's electricity production. Over the course of this year, Sasha said about 50% of Israel's electricity production. Just to put in perspective, those 7 years from 2004 to 2011, where we were ramping up Mary B, Israel saved over 26 billion shekels in fuel costs. A year delay in the connection of Tamar cost Israel about 15 billion shekels from having to burn more expensive fuels. So the savings that accrue to Chevra Chashmal, to Israel Electric Corporation, to its customers, to our other customers in the industrial sector, make Israel more competitive and create jobs, allow for growth in the economy. From Leviathan, and that will depend a lot on what the government does over the coming weeks.
When do you expect the government
But
decision to
we
take
would
place?
expect, as Minister Steinitz said this morning, hopefully the first part of December, for this chapter to be behind us and for the development of Leviathan to be in front of us. Our CEO said a couple weeks ago that he would expect gas to flow in 2019, 2020 from Leviathan. I think that's realistic. And I listened this morning very intently to Leader of the Opposition, Yitzhak Herzog, as well as to the Prime Minister and Minister Steinitz. And what I found was that gas can play a role in all of their goals here. So when Bougie Herzog speaks about an alliance with Egypt and with Jordan, what we're trying to do right now is sell gas to Egypt and Jordan. The geopolitical benefits in the region are huge, and that's why I think it's a little disappointing that some in the party that wants to promote these regional ties are opposing the framework that allows these deals to move forward. It will create and spur foreign investment where we're looking at $6 to $8 billion in investment in infrastructure in Israel, and really creates a new path forward with the regional ties, with prosperity at home and prosperity in the region.
What about the Egyptian discovery of its own gas and its own natural gas company? I'm sorry, I forgot the name.
Warshawski.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I forgot the name of the Egyptian.
It's a Zohr field. Yes, the Zohr field was discovered by Italian company 2 months ago. It's a very serious discovery. It's approximately of the size of Leviathan. Recoverable reserves in this field are probably 550 billion cubic meters. But it should be taken into the consideration that the problem of Egypt is not the reserve base. In fact, before this discovery, Egypt has proven reserves of 2,200 billion cubic meters. And this new discovery adds additional 20-25% to existing reserves. It's substantial. It's not a game changer. The problem of Egypt is not that they don't have reserves. The problem of Egypt was that they did a very problematic regulatory policy. There was a very aggressive price control and very substantial subsidies for the industries, and they also didn't pay to companies for gas and oil, which they produced. As a result of it, companies stopped to invest in Egypt. And it is the main problem of the country. One more time, this discovery is substantial, it's serious, it's also a very positive sign for all this area from the geological point of view, because it means that it's also a new kind of play from geological point of view. It means that there is a big potential also in Israel and also in Cyprus for the same type of new discoveries. But I don't think that it changed drastically the situation in Egypt. It will be changed if they will continue in their reforms.
Okay. We have to finish. So last words on the subject from each of you. First, Bini.
Noble Energy has been here since 1998. We're going to be here for several decades into the future, developing in partnership with the government of Israel, Israel's natural gas fields and resources. We will benefit from that. The citizens of Israel will benefit from that, and the region will benefit from that.
Yossi.
I believe that within 10 years we can forget about all demonstration. We can be proud and say that beside the high tech, we have the gas and that's going to be the future of our economy, our relationship here in the area, and it will be new world with no pollution and a lot of money in the government pocket to use for education, social benefit, and development of the country.
Alexander Warshawski, I haven't forgotten your name. I just
Well, I think that in December the gas regulatory framework will be finally approved. As we heard in the morning, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy are very determined and have very strong will to proceed with the development of the oil and gas sector and with the new exploration and production. And it will open, it will give a green light also for the new export agreements and as well as for the development of Israeli industry, which will be based on gas.
And the final word to Caroline Glick.
You know, I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu made clear this morning that one of the three legs that Israel's national security stands on is economic security. And when we look at the boycott, sanctions, and divestment movement that Israel is facing increasingly in the Western world in particular, we understand that finished consumer products make up a mere 5% of Israeli trade. And most of the stuff that we do is business to business and that don't have a made in Israel stamp on it. So that when we look at the laggard growth of our economy over the past couple of years and understand the implications for our staying power in the midst of war, we have to recognize that this is damage that we're doing to ourselves by not providing the regulatory and investment environment in this country that's going to enable the real engines of economic growth in terms of foreign direct investment and development of our resources to take place. I think that the takeaway lesson from the debacle of the regulatory jungle that our energy producers have had to face over the past couple of years is that we need to have a serious education program among young Israelis and indeed throughout Israeli society to understand the fundamentals of economics and to understand why the development of a massive new industry in Israel will benefit everybody, even if we don't have price controls, in fact, only if we don't have price controls. And so long as we don't develop a taxation environment that makes it impossible for investors, no matter how willing they are to come here, to actually remain here over time. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all our panelists, Caroline Glick, Yossi Rosen, Bini Zomer, and Alexander Warshawski for a fascinating discussion. Thank you all.